This morning, thousands of demonstrators will gather in Washington, D.C. and in dozens of other U.S. cities to demand the passage of federal voting rights legislation. It comes on the 58th anniversary of the March on Washington, a pivotal moment in the civil rights movement and in American history.
I would simply like to say that I think this has been one of the great days of America.
Martin Luther King Jr. made that pronouncement on this day, 58 years ago, before he made a speech that still echoes through the ages.
50 years ago,
King was the last of several speakers to address a crowd of 250,000 people gathered before the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside.
The March on Washington was organized in the wake of violence against civil rights demonstrations in Birmingham, Alabama. Organizers wanted to pressure Congress to pass the Civil Rights Act. King's speech originally was planned for just 4 minutes. It lasted 16.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
It doesn't have a title. It's not identified as I Have a Dream. You can simply see the date. You'll see that he pretty much followed the script.
Former college basketball coach George Raveling stood to King's left. King gave him his personal copy of the speech, which he showed to our James Brown back in 2013.
Now, notice there's an asterisk here on the copy of the speech.
Well, and this is where we now go into the ad-lib part of the I Have a Dream speech.
Because I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
King's inspiration for using the dream concept came from Prathia Hall, a civil rights activist he heard speak the previous year. Her story was part of the PBS documentary, The Black Church.
She began to talk to God aloud about what she desired for the world, and over again, she kept saying to God, I have a dream.
He said, I love the way you did that. I'm going to use that. Now, she did not put all that content between I have a dream and what he's saying, but just the motif, I have a dream.
But the marchers' dreams have not fully been realized.
The yeas are 219, the nays are 212.
This week, the House passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, aimed at restoring part of the Voting Rights Act that prevented restrictive election laws.
The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation.
King was assassinated 5 years after his I Have a Dream speech. On the 50th anniversary of his death, I sat down with his children.
I have to ask this question of you. Did you have to lose your father for the nation and the world to appreciate him the way they do today?
You look at the greater good in terms of the sacrifice, because if he had lived, he may not have been, I'm certain he would not have been as effective. Because he gave his life, he was martyred, and then you remember all of the positive things he left behind.
Such an impact. And of course, that speech was also known as the Broken Promises speech, that America had not lived up to the promise of freedom for all. And it wasn't doing very well to the crowd. It didn't play to the crowd. And then Mahalia Jackson remembered hearing him talk of the dream in Detroit. And she said, give him the dream, give him the dream. Yeah. And the rest is history.
And interesting to see how it changed. It didn't change from what was scripted out.
Yeah.
Great story, Michelle.
Yeah.